Markovich.
Thank you for allowing us to come here. I started my career with the Department of Corrections in 1993 as an MTA. We had dual licensure. We all had to be either an LVN, a psych tech, or an RN. And we also carried around a badge because we were custody. The receiver came in, and I was gone for 8 years because my husband was active duty Air Force and was transferred overseas. But I came back in 2006 as a contractor and came back as a state employee in 2007. We have a lot of mandatory overtime. You don't want your nurses to be mandated to work a 16-hour shift. You're going to have a lot of medication errors. And like these other two we're talking about, we have a lot of contractors here. And I'm here as the Bargaining Unit 20 chair, which gives me a lot of insight because I don't just represent the Department of Corrections, I also Department of State Hospitals and CalVet. And we have been advocating for years to eliminate mandatory overtime. And we've been doing this since 2003. In 2016, we had a joint labor management task force started, which we started in 2017, to eliminate or reduce mandatory overtime. Governor Schwarzenegger and Governor Brown vetoed legislation to make that happen. But there is a state law for nurses that work in the private sector that they're not able to be mandated. How does Kaiser and Sutter get nurses to work when they're short-staffed? They offer them incentives. They offer them money. We do not get that. We don't even get a decent shift differential when we work weekends, holidays. The RNs get 60 cents per hour, and it has been that for years. When you look at other facilities, Kaiser and things, shift differentials are anywhere between 5 and 20% of your base salary. That's wrong that the state does this. In this report that we did, which was with the state on mandatory overtime and getting the reduction, we found out a lot of information. And it's actually disturbing. CCHCS spent $138 million this year in registry. Since 2014, they have spent $1.18 million with management solutions on registry classifications. That's just not RNs, LVNs, CNAs. That's the doctors too. $1.18 billion. That's a lot of money. In the report that we did, there was an RN at Avenal State Prison in 1 month made $30,897 for a month's work. An LVN made $14,318. A CNA made $9,033. That's anywhere to 2.5 to 1.9% more than a state employee. They get better working hours. They're not mandated to work weekends. They're not mandated to work holidays. They get to set their schedule. Well, your state employees who are invested in making sure that we provide the best medical care to our incarcerated population are told, you can't have a day off. We don't have the staff. You want to go home? So when we calculated the amount of mandatory overtime last year for each of the classifications, when they gave us a list of the total number, divided it by 8, which would give you a shift, 840 certified nursing assistants, 1,847 LVNs, 2,681 registered nurses were mandated. What that means is at the end of your 8-hour shift, you're not allowed to go home. Management comes to you and says, you will stay another 8. I don't care what you have planned. If you do not stay, you are going to get paperwork, which means a letter of instructions. And if you do enough of them, guess what? You're getting an adverse action, which means they're going to take sometimes 5% of your pay for a year, and you're going to get this in your paperwork for 3 years. And The Department of Corrections, I'm sorry, it's very formidable. You walk in, that gate slams behind you. You have to rely on an officer to push that key to let you out. You don't know what's going to happen to you that day. You know, we have a clause in our contract that says they don't negotiate if you're held hostage. So you don't know what's going to happen on that day. You do not know if you're going to go home. You do not know if the inmate has made a manufactured weapon that's going to go into your back. Some are able to wear protective vests, but that only covers your front chest. And to find out that registry are getting so many more benefits. I saw a paycheck from an LVN that worked up at Pelican Bay. Her stipend for 1 week, not including her hourly wage, was $2,000. My base pay at 24 years with working for the department is just over $6,000 before you take any taxes out, before you take out any medical. How do we survive? We've asked for raises, we've asked for stipends. We don't get it. And it's very, very frustrating. We're missing events. Department of Corrections, like police officers, we have a high rate of suicide and divorces because we're there. We bond with our coworkers, and we cannot leave the facility and go home and have a normal conversation with our family members. They don't understand what goes on behind the wire. And then to find out that this person that we're working next to is making double the amount of money, they don't get mandated, it's just not right. And then they dictate your staffing levels. They don't even let our local management determine where our nurses should be working. This is all done at headquarters. Why? We have what we call our TTA, which is our emergency room. 2 people, 2 RNs to go wherever we have an incident. And when I say an incident, I'm talking you don't know what you're going to. It could be a hanging, it could be a stabbing, it could be a fight out of the yard. And you have to drop what you're doing, grab a big green bag, and run. And hope that the scene is cleared by the time you get there, and try and figure out what you have to do. And then bring that patient back to the TTA. So we need money. We need to be able to recruit. Part of the process and the problem with recruiting people is it takes forever to do the recruitment process. We need to be able to recruit people in less than 30 days. Nurses is a shortage. I saw an article in the newspaper that there was 6,000 people that applied for an RN program. The acceptance rate was 1%. So if we are competing with the Department of Corrections to bring in new nurses, we need to be able to pay them considerably the same amount as outside, because we want to bring these people in, not have contract staff that they're going to go where the money is. We were there during COVID. We were there with the mask. Department of Corrections and CCHCS, I don't know if you know this, but during COVID, we had mandatory COVID testing twice a week. If we did not have a COVID test, we were written up. We were given letters of instruction for not doing a COVID test during that period of time. No questions asked. You didn't come, you didn't get it done, here's your paperwork. So we need...
Please summarize.
We need shorter times. We need alternate work schedules. We need to be able to, if we want, work 12-hour shifts. We need competitive salaries. We need to use the registry appropriately, requiring them to work weekends, holidays. They just don't get to work day shift Monday through Friday where we're always stuck on weekends. We have some people that, because of our schedule, have not had weekends off on their schedule for years. So in closing, I hope this information that I've shared with you will guide your decision-making process with the state budget. for the recruitment and retention of permanent nursing staff and will help eliminate mandatory overtime. And lastly, I hope the numbers that I've shared with you for the registry contracts make it clear that the state is spending an excessive amount of money and resources that could be utilized for permanent nursing staff.
Thank you very much. Well, I had a feeling, but listening to all of you, confirms some of what I thought we would hear today. Let me start off first with Dr. Mann. Can you explain to me this whole contracting thing? How does that process work, or why does it exist? Is it, if I ask them, well, why do you have this whole contracting, are they going to say because we can't hire enough people, so it's our backfill, or can you give me a little more details?
That is usually what it is. The other interesting thing is I don't think you would ever get the accurate numbers because we can't. We cannot get the most accurate information about how many contractors are out there. What I hear a lot from our management, and I've heard it over the years, is there's a nationwide shortage of psychiatrists. Which is true, but you're able to fill the exact same positions with the same psychiatrists who just want to work as contractors. So there's something there that maybe we need to focus on. It's not that people are not willing to work, it's just that you're not paying them the competitive salaries that they would make as contractors.
And your understanding is that contractors make more than yourself?
A lot more, yes.
Wow. And why is that? Or why are you told?
Yeah, nobody will tell us anything, but we're under a lawsuit. We have certain staffing requirements, and CDCR needs to make sure that we show that those positions are filled. So when you don't have enough civil service, you're filling them up with contract psychiatrists. And it is absolutely true, like my colleague said here, contractors do get better hours, they get better benefits, they get sort of preferential treatment, they even get offices that most civil servants don't to see their patients, which is kind of what I think is the reason. And
what facilities do you work at?
So I have worked in the past at San Quentin State Prison, California State Prison, Sacramento. It's in Folsom. Stockton Healthcare Facility. I worked at Mule Creek State Prison, and currently I work at headquarters.
And when you're providing specifically, because the type of work that you provide, is to people who are not well, do you feel safe? Have you ever been attacked or approached, or?
I have been attacked once, and I have felt extremely unsafe at one point, which actually was the reason I quit my job at CSP Sacramento. My attack was a very sick, mentally ill patient. I think this was my first 6 months within CDCR. The patient was just very ill. Basically, I had to just run out and get them emergency treatment at that point.
Do you have radios?
We do have radios, which are sometimes not available and sometimes not working.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Cannon, you mentioned some pretty horrific situations, banging, yelling, violence, rats, snakes.
The tarantulas are the worst.
How do they get in there? I mean, does someone bring them in, or they're just...
No, most of our prisons are sort of out in the wilderness, and so this is just a part of the natural environment. The rattlesnakes, as an example, you can find them in the parking lot. I remember coming in to RHU, they call it now ADSEG, we called it back then, and there was a rattlesnake under one of my colleagues' desks. We had cubicles in the housing unit, on the housing unit floor. That's where we worked. This desk with a cage, a therapeutic module next to us, and the officers would go and get our patients out of the cells and bring them to us. But yeah, you walk into a housing unit and you'll see rattlesnakes, you'll see tarantulas, you'll see all the fun things that I mentioned.
And is your experience the same as what Dr. Mann explained in terms of contracting work?
Yes, absolutely. The positions that are available, the mental health staffing positions, are court-ordered. The Coleman Court has ordered these ratios and these mental health positions, and it is very, very difficult. I was going to say it's impossible. It's not impossible, but it's very, very difficult to fill those with civil servants when you're making half, a third of what a contractor would make. And many of these contracting agencies, so I'll just give you real numbers. I know contractors, psychologists that are making $180 an hour. At the top of the pay scale for civil servants, it's $80 an hour, and that's what the contracting agency is paying the contractor. What is the state paying the contracting agency? It is impossible to find out. We have asked and asked and asked, but that would tell the tale, wouldn't it? If the state is paying these contracting agencies $300 an hour for these psychologists, you could double my salary tomorrow, and including benefits, you would still be saving $100 an hour, and you would be able to fill these positions so quickly. When I started in 2007, the receiver had stepped in and unilaterally raised, almost doubled salaries for mental health staff, and we were flush with staff for a couple of years. And then slowly but surely, everybody else caught up and passed us. It doesn't seem like, I'm going to say it this way, AFSCME is not one of the larger organizations. We're smaller organizations, and so we don't often have the pull that some of the larger organizations have, and we feel that at times when our requests are ignored. And yeah, you live in a place like San Diego, you live in a place like Sacramento or San Jose or Los Angeles or San Francisco, and you're a civil servant, it is very, very difficult to pay the bills. I used to joke, I'm just trying to figure out how to pay for health care in Little League. That was my struggle. That has been my struggle as a parent for years and years and years and years working for the state. I'm just trying to figure out how to pay for health care and Little League. So we take two jobs. There have been times when I've had 4 jobs, and I've never had less than 2 jobs just to make ends meet. And again, on some level, that's embarrassing for the state that our civil servants have to work 2, 3, 4 jobs just to live in the places where they live so they can go to the facilities where they work at.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
You had asked one other question. I apologize for interrupting, but you had asked Dr. Mann another question about safety. I, too, have been assaulted, and it was a very, very sick patient who was very, very psychotic. And in that situation, I was lucky enough to get out of the office that I was in, and I was hitting my alarm, which is really just a garage door opener from the 80s, and it didn't work. It didn't exist. No alarm sounded. I'm fumbling for my whistle, and I was lucky that there was another psychologist in the trailer at the time who ran next door where the officers were and got them, and they were able to come and subdue this attacker. But who knows if that person hadn't been there, what that would have looked like eventually. And those are things that make your heart race. Every time you walk into a prison and they close the sally port behind you and you're looking at the sign that says, we don't negotiate if there's a hostage situation. Those are things that you just sort of, I guess, get used to over the course of 18 years, but it doesn't make them less real. There's still a reality for those of us who work in prison systems. We love our CCPOA partners. They've kept me safe for the last 18 years, but they're the ones with batons and the pepper spray and the colleague. We sit alone in offices with convicted rapists, murderers, and serial killers for hours at a time trying to treat mental illness, trying to help these people, because like I said earlier, they go home, and we want them to go home and not create more victims. That's our goal. Thank you.
Do either of you find that where you work, are they actual hospitals where people are receiving mental health care?
We have inpatient
So
and
it's not-
outpatient
okay.
programs.
Okay. And then my last question for Ms. Markovich, is the registry used in the same way as the contracting that Mr. Mann and, I'm sorry, Ms. Mann and Mr. Cannon described?
Oh, yes. Our registry, you have to have a nurse to pass medication. If you don't have a body to pass that medication, you have to have registry. We do a lot of voluntary overtime. We do a lot of voluntary overtime, and then to be mandated on top of that, and then have these registry come in, and they're getting paid more. They get to pick and choose what days they want. When we go to management, they're like, yeah, we have to guarantee them 40 hours as part of the contract. And we're like, why? And my facility that I work at, when I started in '93, we were the only institution in the state of California that had HIV positive inmates. So because of that, we have a 17-bed hospice. We have an outpatient housing unit, which is like a step-down unit. They're not healthy enough to be out on the main line, but they don't require total 24-hour nursing care. We have 3 units or 2 units that are strictly medical units, and we have a large psychiatric program. We have a large mental health crisis bed unit, which anytime an inmate comes up to you and says, I feel suicidal, our response is, okay, we have to keep you in front of us. We have to initiate a protocol, and then we have to watch you one-on-one until the psychiatrist or the psychologist come in and say, he's stable enough to go back to his housing unit or transfer into a psychiatric unit, which means for 8 hours, and it's very difficult for 8 hours to sit in front of a cell door, look at an inmate through a window, and have to document every 15 minutes, are they sleeping, are they eating? And they can have some really bizarre activities that you're like, okay, we have IEX, sexual predators, that they have no problem, and I guess there's no easy way to say it, but they do masturbate in front of you. They've done it in front of the clinical workers. They have, and it's part of what these guys are then treating them for, but that is stuff that we are exposed to on a daily basis. Sometimes we're medicating out of an old broom closet, and that's where our med card is. We're giving them all the medications that's been prescribed within what they have, but that is our work environment. We have had garbage bags taped to the ceiling so that when it leaks, it runs into a trash can. It's hot, it's muggy. We don't have air conditioning unless it's a brand new wing, which is and with psychiatric patients, we have heat meds. So we get a list of, okay, these guys are on heat meds. We have to watch to make sure that they don't overheat, because if they overheat on a psychiatric medication, that is going to be detrimental to their health. So there's a lot of things that we have to worry about, not on top of the manipulation that we get. When you go to work, you have your cell phone. Your family calls you, guess what? You pick it up, okay, yeah, this is what I'm doing. We're not allowed to have cell phones. We have to leave all that in our car. We're not really supposed to have one-on-one conversations to get to know the patients or the inmates very well, because you don't want to get into that position where they know a lot about you. So that's very standoffish, and it's a really hard environment to go to. And when you go home and you want to tell your spouse about, oh, this is what happened today, they're like, yeah, right. Well, I don't want to listen to this because it's the same thing. But we just don't feel like we've been valued by the state. We were there during COVID. We're there 24/7 for the patients, because we still realize that these are human beings. Yes, they made a bad mistake. They're paying for it. But there's a lot of people out on the streets that have done that same behavior, and they just haven't got caught yet.
Right.
So we need the state to help us with pay, to bring qualified people to the table and not rely on registry. $1.18 billion, that's a lot of our taxpayer money going to people that really aren't that invested. They're going where the money is.
Right. Well, Dr. Mann and Dr. Cannon and Ms. Markovich, I really appreciate the frankness that you've shared with us today. I almost feel like I ought to apologize on behalf of the state for really not, providing you the best as you're trying to do your best. I will say that, of course, I'm sure you understand we're limited. I don't control in terms of pay rates and things like that. That is negotiated. However, there are some things that you said that we can look at, such as mandatory, overtime and, registries and, that's what we call pay equity, right? So a lot of things that you've been able to share with us today have been very, very helpful. So I thank you for your time. I wish you well. I'm doing my best to be informed in this position. So as we look at the budget, we can kind of pull some of these things out and do our best to educate others of why we need to make certain adjustments. This is a very tough year. I want to be very honest with you. Between the fires and the administrative things that are happening on the federal level, we're just hoping we can keep things afloat at this point. But, California, we always figure it out, and we always do very well as a state. So I'm committed, which is why I wanted to have this hearing, to understand how we could be more helpful to you. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.
I just have one thing.
Yes, ma'am.
We do a flyer here on mandatory overtime with our report. Can I give you this? And
Yes,
the
if you
QR
give it-
code
Yes,
where you
yes,
can
ma'am.
scan it, and you can actually get the reports that were written.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.